Hi, I'm Harper. Welcome back to my channel, Harper Cooks. Today we are going to be making my take on French dip sandwiches with French onion soup. I'm going to be using short ribs to do this, so follow along to learn more. I'm going to start off by going over all the ingredients that we're going to use for this meal. First, I have my short ribs here. I have a French baguette. I'm going to be using some sliced sharp cheddar. I have a bag of yellow onions. I might not use all of them, but I will use a lot of them. And then I have 2 things of beef stock and some butter. So this meal doesn't include too many ingredients, but it just takes a long time to make. It's not a complex meal as far as what you're doing, but it does take about 3.5 hours from start to finish. I'm gonna go ahead and add about a tablespoon of butter, and then I'm gonna add my short ribs to the pan to brown them on all sides. I've now got my short ribs in the pan, and I'm going to brown these on all sides. Once they're brown, they're gonna go in the Dutch oven, and I'll show you what to put in the Dutch oven next. So while those are cooking, I'm gonna go ahead and prep my Dutch oven. This is what my Dutch oven looks like. I use it a lot. You can use it for bread or you can use it for soups. I usually use it for soups. I haven't made bread yet, but maybe that's something I'll try soon. So I'm gonna go ahead and prep what goes in this Dutch oven and then show you what is going to be in here with your short ribs. So I'm gonna dump my beef stock, 1 full thing and about a half of another. I'm not going to be precise with it, but if you want to, then you can go ahead and measure out about 6 cups of beef stock. And now we're going to chop the onions and then stick the onions in there. I'm going to check on the brown sides of the short rib and just make sure that it might be time to flip and just double check what I need to do here. I went ahead and flipped my short ribs. This is what they look like on one side, and I'm going to keep going until they look like this on every side. Then they will go in the pot into the oven. Okay, now it is time to chop onions. So I'm going to go ahead and chop these until it looks like I have about enough. I might be using about like 5 of these small onions, but you could use probably 3 of some big onions if you want to. I've got each of my onions in half like this, and I'm going to go ahead and cut them so they look like this for the soup. And now my oven is preheated and ready to go. So once the short ribs are browned on all sides and the Dutch oven is ready, then I can go ahead and stick it into the oven. So those onions have me tearing up a little bit, so forgive me if my eyes are all watery, but I'm gonna go ahead and stick all the onions that I chopped into the pot with the beef stock, and then the soup will be pretty much ready to go. This is what the pot looks like now. I'm gonna go ahead and finish browning the sides of the short ribs, and then this will be ready to go into the oven. This is what my short ribs look like now. All 3 of them are ready to go into the Dutch oven. I'm gonna put those in the Dutch oven, and then I'm also gonna take all of this juice that's at the bottom and throw that into the Dutch oven as well, because it's gonna make the soup more flavorful. And this is what my pot looks like. I'm gonna go ahead and dump all of this into the Dutch oven as well. I want to explain a couple of things about the French dip / French onion soup. The French onion soup will be what's left at the bottom of the Dutch oven once the short ribs are done. I don't use wine in mine, but you could use red wine to add more flavor. You could also add garlic. You could add pretty much anything that you wanted to give it a little bit of extra flavor to the soup. But for me, I just like the sweet taste of those onions and then the savory taste of the short ribs, and I think that that really just adds everything that you need. But it will be basically a combination of like the au jus dip / a French onion soup. It's just my take on it. I'm checking on my short ribs and they're looking really good. My camera's steaming up a little bit, but the soup is looking really good and the short ribs are looking like they might almost be done. So I'm gonna try and pull them and see if the bone falls out. So the bone came right out of all of the short ribs, but they weren't tender enough to pull apart with 2 forks. That's kind of how I tell if the short rib is ready or not. I pull out the bone first and then I try and pull it apart with 2 forks. It seems like it's gonna need maybe another 30 to 45 minutes or even up to an hour. So I'm gonna go ahead and put it back in the oven now. While I put it back in the oven and it's cooking, I'm gonna make some French fries from scratch. And I'm also going to prep the sandwiches by slicing up some bread and getting everything ready to go for the meal. While my short ribs finish cooking, I have a washed russet potato here that I'm going to chop into long slices to make like French fries. And then I will put this on a pan, a stainless steel pan with some bacon grease. I'm cooking some bacon now for another meal, and I'll use the grease that's left over to go ahead and make some French fries for this meal. I used 1 russet potato and I'm left with about this many fries. I put my potatoes in an even layer so that they can fry up like French fries. They're in a mixture of bacon, grease, and butter. If you want to know why I've done this, I've talked about it in my first video about making homemade BLTs with French fries. But basically, I just like to use animal fat rather than using any kind of oils like seed oils, but you could use like avocado oil if you wanted to do that with this to make it vegan French fries. And while these cook, I'm gonna go ahead and slice my bread for the sandwiches. I'm using a French baguette for this meal, and I'm gonna make sandwiches and slice this in about thirds. I did slice off the ends because the heel was pretty firm here and I didn't want the sandwich to be too crunchy. So I'm gonna slice this into thirds and use 2/3 of this for 2 sandwiches. The last third I'm gonna save for another time for a different meal. I'm gonna slice this in half. And I will warm this up with some butter in the oven once the short ribs are ready to be pulled. So while they're being pulled, I'll heat this up in the oven, but we still have some time to wait until then. I'm gonna add some Parmesan to my French fries, so I'm going to go ahead and grate this Parmesan finely to add onto the fries. My fries are starting to look good. They have these little pieces on them because I did cook bacon in this pan right before and I didn't wipe the pan down, but that's fine with me because the fries are gonna have a bacon flavor. I'm also gonna put Parmesan on them once they're done. I'm kind of letting them fry on one side before flipping them so that they don't fall apart and so that they do stay crispy. I'm checking on my short rib and this is what it looks like now. I know that there's a layer here, but that's just because of the amount of heat that is inside the pot right now. And so it's totally fine. The soup is looking good here. It's looking like it's almost condensed really nicely, like an au jus. And then the short ribs are also looking really good. I'm gonna go ahead and try and pull them now. And if they pull, then they are ready to be served. The meat was able to be pulled apart, so this is what I'm left with. I pulled it by putting 1 fork down and holding a piece of meat and then using another fork to pull at it. I did make sure to pull apart and throw out any of the parts that were originally connected to the bone because I don't like to eat those parts. This is what my French fries are looking like now, so they look really great. I'm gonna pull them off here in a second, add some Parmesan and some salt, and then we're pretty much gonna be ready. I'm also gonna turn off the oven now and then put the bread in so that it can warm up. I'm prepping my sandwiches now, so I'm going to put a piece of cheese on each of these sliced sandwich rolls, and then I'm going to add some honey butter to it and then stick those in the oven for a little bit so that they get warm and softer. Then I'm going to put the pulled meat on there, the pulled short ribs, and we'll be ready to plate. Just as a reminder, I'm using sharp cheddar, and I also split these in half to layer them so that they fit a little bit better on my sandwich. You can brush your sandwich with regular butter or no butter at all, but I just homemade this honey butter, so I thought that it would add a nice little sweetness to the short ribs and to the sandwich. So it's going to be a little bit salty because it is a French onion style sandwich. So I'm going to add the honey butter onto the sandwich and stick those in the oven to let the cheese and the butter melt. And then I will plate it. My French fries look perfect. I am so excited. I'm going to put some Parmesan and some salt on here to add some extra flavor. I'm going to mix this together and then let the Parmesan melt. I've got my baguettes on some parchment paper. I'm just going to stick these in the oven for a couple minutes to let the butter and the cheese melt now. I pulled the meat out from the soup, and so I have the meat separated from the soup. Most of the meat is out of there. So the soup will go on the side as a dipping sauce or a dipping au jus, I guess. And then the meat will go onto the actual sandwich. I have plated my soup and my French fries while I'm waiting for the sandwiches to cook. This is what the bread looks like coming out of the oven. I'm gonna add the meat on top and then just close the sandwiches and plate them, and then it'll be all done. Here's what the meat looks like on the sandwiches. So I'm gonna close the sandwiches up and then plate them. Here's what the sandwiches look like. Forgive the mess that I made on the counter making this meal. And that's all. Thank you so much for watching my braised short ribs with French onion soup and homemade French fries. And I turned the short ribs into a sandwich. It's gonna be so good. I am so excited. I've made this before, but I think that I perfected it with this recipe. So I hope you enjoy it. And as always, like, comment, and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. And I'll see you in the next one. Thanks.